That morning, I woke up with a happy heart the day my brother married the girl of his dreams. I was the maid of honor. Everything seemed perfect until an anonymous text message arrived with just one sentence: "Don't come to the wedding. Check your husband's garage before it's too late." I thought it was a joke. But when I opened that door, my world fell apart. And not just mine, my brother's. This is a story of elaborate betrayal, a hidden conspiracy in my own family. But it is also a story of how I, a seemingly weak woman, rose up and saved myself and the people I loved, using the most powerful weapon of all, the truth. Chapter 1. Before the wedding, everything was perfect, or so I thought. That morning felt perfect. The sky was clear, the sun was gentle, and the air was cool enough that the wedding dress wouldn't cling uncomfortably to the skin. Everything was going according to plan. I thought it would be a day to remember for all the right reasons. My younger brother Patrick was about to marry Shannon, the girl our entire family adored. I had woken up at 5 a.m., even before my alarm went off. Excitement was the first thing I felt when I opened my eyes. But little did I know by the end of the day, excitement would be the last emotion I remembered. Patrick was the little brother I had always protected ever since we were kids. I'm 2 years older, and I used to be the one helping him with tough math problems, comforting him after his first heartbreak and this time. I helped him plan his entire wedding. I had been involved in every single step of the preparations, from choosing the venue, sampling wedding cakes, picking floral color schemes to altering Shannon's dresses. Shannon's mother lived in another state and couldn't fly in due to health issues, so I essentially became the maid of honor/unofficial wedding planner. And I did it all with love. The wedding was set to take place in the old church our family had attended since I was a child. Patrick chose a classic black tuxedo looking so grown up and composed that I nearly teared up when I saw him try it on. Shannon glowed in her wedding gown, the very one I had taken her to buy during a special discount event. I remember exactly how it felt when she stepped out of the fitting room, spun in front of the mirror, and burst into tears. Pure joy radiated from every hug, every knowing wink we shared while choosing bridesmaid dresses or debating over the reception menu. I even quietly covered the cost to upgrade the catering package when Patrick had car troubles and ran into unexpected expenses. I didn't want him to worry about money on his big day. I thought helping family was just natural. That real love doesn't count the effort it gives. Honestly, I had never felt closer to Patrick than I did during that time. Watching him grow, finding someone he truly trusted, gave me peace of mind. And I told myself that even if my own marriage to Scott had cooled over the years, at least Patrick would get the kind of beautiful love I had once dreamed of. That morning, after doing my hair and a bit of light makeup at home, I stood in front of the mirror adjusting the navy blue dress I had so carefully chosen down to every stitch. It wasn't too flashy to upstage the bride, but elegant enough to look graceful in the wedding photos. I smiled the kind of smile you give yourself when everything feels just right. I truly believed that day was perfect, that every ounce of effort had been worth it, that all that was left was to step out the door, arrive at the venue, and witness my brother slip a wedding ring onto the finger of the woman he loved. I had no idea that just minutes later, a single text message would change my entire life, and that this wedding, this love, had all been an act. Chapter 2. A text, a key, and a truth. I didn't want to know I was putting on mascara when my phone buzzed, thinking it was Mom reminding me about the flowers, or the schedule. I glanced at the screen, a number I didn't recognize. No name saved. The message was short. "Don't go to the wedding. Go to your husband's garage. You need to see what's there before it's too late." I froze. The mascara wand trembled in my hand, and for a few seconds, my mind went blank. At first, I thought someone was pulling a cruel prank, maybe a wedding day joke, but that chill running down my spine wouldn't let me brush it off so easily. I read the message again. This time, every word carved itself into my heart. "Don't go to the wedding. Go to your husband's garage. You need to see what's there before it's too late." I looked at myself in the mirror. The woman staring back, wavy hair just curled yesterday. Flawless foundation lips tinted a soft, neutral pink, looked like she was ready for a bridal photo shoot. But her eyes were different, clouded, anxious, deeply unsettled. I didn't know who sent the message. I didn't know what it was I was supposed to see. But my gut, that same instinct that had saved me from countless mistakes before, was screaming, "Go check, right now." Scott, my husband, had left the house at 7:30 that morning, said he needed to stop by the office to handle some things before the ceremony. I didn't think twice. His job had always been unpredictable. It work, emergency fixes. I was used to him leaving in a rush, coffee untouched, phone glued to his hand. But now that I thought about it, this morning he'd seemed off. That half-hearted goodbye kiss, the forced smile, eyes constantly on his phone. When I asked is something wrong, he just shook his head and walked out. I headed into the bedroom, opened the drawer in my jewelry box. I dug through the mess of tangled necklaces until I found the small silver garage key Scott had given me months ago. At the time, he'd said, "Just in case I forget, good to have a backup." I'd tossed it in there and forgotten about it. Now suddenly, it felt strangely significant. Still in my bridesmaid dress, heels on key in hand, I stood in front of the garage door. My palms were sweaty. The clock on the wall read 9:15 a.m. The ceremony was nearly 3 hours away. I had time. But I also had a terrifying sense of certainty. Once I opened this door, my life would never be the same again. I took a deep breath and slid the key into the lock. A soft click. I pushed the door open. The garage was dark and musty. Light spilled in from the back door, landing on Scott's old Honda covered with a blue tarp. On the shelves were plastic bins filled with winter gear, old paint cans, dusty camping equipment. Everything looked familiar, normal. I almost laughed. What kind of joke was this? A random message making me panic, dragging me away from wedding prep. Just to see paint in storage boxes, I was about to turn around when something caught my eye. Tucked behind the paint cans, partially covered by a striped blue and white towel, was something that didn't belong. That towel. We never owned one like that. I crouched down, gently pulled the fabric aside. A wooden box, strange, small, closed with tarnished brass hinges. I had never seen it before. I hesitated, then opened the lid, and in that moment, I knew that message wasn't a prank. Inside were pieces of women's jewelry, none of it mine. A silver charm bracelet with stars and hearts, an expensive bottle of perfume I'd never dared to buy, a silk scarf that still carried a faint scent, and then photos, dozens of them. I couldn't bring myself to look too closely. My heart pounded, my hands trembled, but deep down I already knew whatever I was about to see would change everything. Chapter 3, The Evidence That Shattered Everything. I bent down, silently lifting each item from the wooden box as if I were unfolding memories that didn't belong to me. A silver charm bracelet with hearts and stars. Tiny pendants etched with letters looked like an S. I'd never worn it. I'd never seen anyone in Scott's family wear it either. Next was a small perfume bottle, the expensive kind I'd only dared to sample at department stores before pulling my hand back at the sight of the price tag. The scent still lingered, seductive, feminine, intense. Then came a silk scarf, soft pastel colors, framed by elegant floral patterns. I wasn't the kind of woman who wore silk scarves, and Scott had never once gifted me anything like it. My throat tightened. My heart felt like it was being squeezed by invisible hands. But the cruelest blow was the photographs. The first one made my blood run cold. Scott, my husband, had his arms around a woman. They stood on a beach I didn't recognize, waves gently crashing at their feet, golden sunlight glowing across their smiling faces. That woman was Shannon. Yes, Shannon, the bride-to-be of my younger brother Patrick, the woman who in just a few hours would walk down the aisle to marry him. The one I had once considered like a sister, the one who hugged me and thanked me for helping her find her wedding dress, They were wrapped around each other so intimately, Shannon's head resting on Scott's shoulder, his hand resting on her waist, like it belonged there. I flipped to the next photo. They were eating ice cream together. Scott beamed as Shannon took a bite from the cone he was holding, a level of closeness that went far beyond just friends. Another photo, autumn woods leaves swirling in the breeze. Scott holding Shannon's hand, and she gazing at him like he was the only man in the world. This wasn't a fleeting affair. This was a relationship, a journey. They'd been together through seasons, through time, long enough to build memories, photos full of real smiles, eyes sparkling with genuine happiness. Every picture I turned over was another slice through my heart, a new fracture in my mind, a fresh betrayal cutting through every inch of me. It wasn't just my husband who had betrayed me. It was my future sister-in-law, the woman I trusted most, stabbing a knife straight into my back and into Patrick's. I stood there, stunned, tears brimming, but refusing to fall. I was too shocked to cry. I tried to breathe, but my hands began trembling as I found the messages, printed neatly, clearly, as if someone had prepared this box for me to discover. Shannon, I can't wait any longer. Scott pretending with Patrick is killing me every day. Shannon, after the wedding, we'll sort everything out. I just need to be his wife on paper. Scott, once you're legally his wife, things will be easier. Shannon, I love you, not Patrick. Scott, just 2 more days. You're stronger than you think. I went still. This wasn't just betrayal. This was a scheme. Shannon planned to marry Patrick for the benefits, for legal standing, for financial security, and then keep seeing Scott, my husband. She was going to stand at the altar, make vows of love and fidelity to Patrick, while secretly plotting her escape with another man. And that man was the one I had shared my bed with for the past 8 years. I had never felt more disgusted, more cold. The garage was dark, but the truth was blinding, like a flashlight pointed right in my face. They had lied. They had plotted. They had put on a show right in front of me for months. I looked at the clock. 9:45 a.m. The ceremony was a little over 2 hours away. Patrick was probably somewhere, nervous, fixing his tie, smiling at himself in the mirror. And me, I was holding the truth that could blow this wedding apart. There was only one question left. What was I going to do with it? Chapter 4. Anger is instinct, but clarity is power. I stood there in the garage, so eerily quiet it felt frozen. In time, the printed messages and photos heavy in my hands. My heart was pounding, throat dry as sand. Part of me just wanted to scream storm into the church, rip Shannon's dress off, and expose her for who she really was in front of 300 guests. I wanted to see Patrick's face shatter to make him understand just how narrowly he was escaping a disaster. I wanted Scott to be speechless, terrified, pierced by hundreds of judging eyes. I wanted justice. I wanted the truth to come out. I wanted to give my brother the fairness he deserved. But then, right in that moment, a voice echoed in my head. Maybe it was my mother's voice, or maybe it was my own survival instinct. If you act impulsively, they'll make you look crazy. I closed my eyes. I pictured myself screaming in the middle of the aisle, pointing fingers at Shannon, waving around the evidence, while she broke into sobs, claiming I made it all up, accusing me of jealousy, saying I was mentally unstable. Scott would be right beside her, his arm around her shoulders, like some reluctant hero offering comfort. They would twist the story. They could spin an alternate version where I was the bitter sister who couldn't handle her brother's happiness, the jealous wife suspicious of Scott's closeness with Shannon. A psychological trap, and if I wasn't careful, I'd walk straight into it like a lamb among wolves. I opened my eyes. My hands had stopped shaking. I knew what I had to do. I needed evidence, not to scream, but to dismantle every excuse they could possibly use with undeniable, irrefutable truth. I began taking photos, one by one carefully. Close-ups of the charm bracelet with the engraved initials, a clear shot of the perfume bottle with the luxury brand label, the silk scarf with a faint perfume stain. Each picture was a bullet I would fire at the right moment. I captured every message, showing the phone number, date, timestamp, and sender's name. No room for denial. No blaming it on Photoshop. Then I carefully put everything back, just as I found it, the scarf gently draped over the wooden box, the paint cans placed to block the view. I left no trace. The garage had to look untouched, because I needed time. I needed Patrick to see it all with his own eyes. I didn't want him to be a victim. I wanted him to choose justice for himself. When I locked the garage door, I understood something. Clearly, this was no longer just between me and Scott. This was about family, about trust, about protecting a good man from the hands of a cruel woman. I got in the car. It was 10:30 a.m., 2 hours before the wedding ceremony. Patrick had enough time to see the truth and choose how to end this story on his terms, and I would be there with him every step of the way. Chapter 5. The truth isn't just to know, it's to act on. I drove straight to my parents' house. My heart thudded in my chest like a hammer against steel. The roads were familiar, but today they looked completely different. I passed the coffee shop where Patrick and Shannon had their first date, the park where they got engaged, and the bridal boutique where I had once seen Shannon cry tears of joy over a dress. All those memories now tasted like betrayal. A message from Mom popped up. Patrick's nervous. "Can you stop by before the ceremony and help calm him down a little?" I almost laughed. "Just a little longer, Mom, and there won't be anything left to calm." I parked in front of the house, gripping my phone tightly, now filled with dozens of photos and damning proof. I stood still for a few seconds, took a deep breath, then stepped up onto the porch. The door swung open before I could even knock. My mother greeted me with a beaming smile, her face glowing with the joy of a mother about to give her son away. "Damie, perfect timing. Patrick's upstairs. He's been pacing all morning." I nodded, swallowing the ice lodged in my chest. Each step up the stairs felt twice as heavy as usual. Patrick's room was just as I remembered, simple, tidy, a few sports medals still hanging on the wall. He was standing in front of the mirror, awkwardly fiddling with his tie. He turned around and flashed the brightest smile when he saw me. "Sis, thank God you're here. I swear this tie is trying to kill me. Every time Mom looks at me, she starts crying. I think I'm about to throw up." I couldn't speak. That smile, that innocence. And in a few minutes, I was going to destroy it all. I closed the door behind me and looked him dead in the eyes. "Patrick, sit down. I need to show you something. You need to know before it's too late." His smile vanished instantly. "What is it? You look like someone just died." "Someone has died, Patrick. But it's someone you haven't realized you're about to bury yourself." I unlocked my phone and handed him the first photo, Scott and Shannon wrapped in each other's arms standing on a beach. There was no denying it, no explaining it away. The look in their eyes wasn't acting. Patrick stared at it, at first confused, then stunned, then silent like he'd just taken a punch straight to the chest. I swiped to the next photo, then the next, then the messages, the love notes, the plans after the wedding. Patrick's hands trembled as he took the phone from mine and kept reading. I didn't need to say another word. "She never loved me. Did she?" he said, voice cracking like a man trying to swallow the whole world. I shook my head. "Not only did she not love you, she used you. You were a prop, a stepping stone, a piece of legal paperwork to make her plans more convenient." Patrick didn't speak, but I could feel the silence boiling, like a pot about to spill over. Then he looked up. No tears, no breakdown. "What do we do now?" I hadn't expected that. I thought he'd scream, smash something, run away. But he just sat there, like a soldier waking up and realizing he was already on the battlefield. "We have two options," I said. "One, we stay quiet. Cancel the wedding behind the scenes. Say there was an emergency. Let it all fade away." Patrick finished my sentence. Or we let everyone see it, at the ceremony, right in front of 300 people. I nodded. Patrick stood up and buttoned his jacket. She's been performing this whole time. Now it's my turn to show her the audience isn't blind. I looked at my little brother, the same man who just minutes ago was panicking over a tie. Now he stood in front of me, not a groom but a warrior, ready to walk into the battle that would define his life. Chapter 6. When the plan isn't to save, it's to destroy. The room fell into a suffocating silence after Patrick's words. She's been acting this whole time. Now it's my turn to show her. The audience isn't blind, I nodded, but inside me a storm was raging. I had to stay calm. Emotions could not sabotage the plan. We had one chance, only one. If we got this wrong, Shannon and Scott could flip the narrative and pin everything on me. That I was jealous, that I was mentally unstable, that I fabricated the whole thing. No, I'd come too far to give them an exit. Patrick sat on the edge of his bed, fists clenched. When do you think we should do this? During the ceremony, I looked him in the eye, my voice firm. The moment the officiant asks, if anyone objects to this union, speak now or forever, hold your peace. That's when you stand up. No one will expect it. Shannon won't expect it. That's the moment you take control. He was quiet for a beat, then nodded. We planned each step as if we were scripting the final act of a play. Not one of love, but of truth. I would sit in the front row. If Shannon tried to deny anything, I'd immediately present the evidence, the photos, the printed texts. Patrick wouldn't scream. He wouldn't break down. He'd speak clearly, briefly, with calm precision, leaving her no room for excuses. And will Scott be there? Patrick asked. Of course not. But when the truth explodes, she'll call him. And when he shows up, I'll be waiting. We rehearsed our words like a speech, not to be dramatic, but to end it cleanly. No holes, no excess. No one could accuse us of doing this out of rage. Outside the window, the sun had risen higher. Time was moving frighteningly fast. We had only hours left to go from victims to judges. Patrick stared at his neatly knotted tie. I'm still wearing this tuxedo, sis. Good. It makes you look strong, and people believe in strength. I looked at him again as if seeing the boy who once grinned wide at his 5th birthday party. But today he wasn't a child. Today he was a man betrayed but not broken. A man who had chosen not to be destroyed, but to end permanently the vile performance masquerading as love. Are you ready? I asked. Patrick pressed his lips together, took a deep breath, then stood. Not for a wedding, but for the truth. And we left that room not to attend a ceremony, but to end a lie, right at the altar where it was meant to be made official. Chapter 7. The bride wasn't the one honored. The truth was, as Patrick and I stepped out of the house, everything around us seemed to function as usual. Birds still chirped. The sun still glowed softly through the trees. No one knew that today was no longer a wedding day. Today was the day truth would take the spotlight. Patrick sat beside me in the car, silent. His hands clenched tightly on his lap, but his face was no longer trembling. It had hardened like stone ready for war. So had mine. The phone in my purse, loaded with evidence, felt like a sword waiting to cut through, every lie wrapped in veils and white lace. We arrived at the church just before 11 a.m. The entrance was lined with white flowers, exactly like the Pinterest board Shannon had once excitedly shown me. I remembered her eyes sparkling as she'd said, "It'll feel like stepping into a dream." A dream, no. Today I would make sure it turned into a nightmare she'd never wake from. Inside the church, everything looked like a blissful celebration. My mother beamed with joy. My father chatted with Pastor Williams, the man who had baptized both me and Patrick when we were kids. No one sensed the tension stretching across the room like a drawn bowstring. No one expected this wedding to become a funeral for a fabricated love. Patrick went to change. I took my seat in the front row dress, smooth posture, straight phone ready in my bag. I breathed evenly, eyes fixed on the church doors, waiting for Shannon to walk in like a goddess, stepping toward her stage of shame. The music began. Heads turned, and then she appeared. A white wedding gown as soft as clouds, a long veil floating behind her eyes, glistening with staged emotion. She performed so well that even I had to silently admit it. Shannon was a master at making people believe she was the perfect, gentle, loyal bride. But I knew the truth. Beneath that lace was a venomous snake. She walked slowly down the aisle, each step bringing her closer to Patrick, the man she had planned to use like a pawn. She took his hand, smiled at him with trusting eyes, a woman about to vow her life, while her heart belonged to her future sister-in-law's husband. The pastor began the ceremony. Marriage is a sacred covenant, a binding of two souls in love and honesty. I bit my lip. His voice echoed through the church, through candlelight stained glass and walls that had witnessed generations of promises. Then came the moment. He looked up and asked if anyone knows a reason why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony. Speak now or forever hold your peace. Silence fell, as if all the air had been vacuumed from the room. Everyone waited for the final blessing. And then Patrick spoke. I have a reason, and I will not stay silent. Heads turned. Murmurs erupted. Gasps spread like wildfire. Shannon froze, her face drained of color, lips tightening. Patrick released her hand, his voice steady. I cannot marry someone who's sleeping with my sister's husband. The silence shattered. The room erupted with shocked whispers, sharp inhales. The church exploded with disbelief. Shannon yanked his hand back, whispering frantically, "What are you, insane?" Patrick turned toward me. I stood and stepped forward, pulling out my phone. I have proof. Photos, messages, all with timestamps and phone numbers. Nothing can be denied. I held the phone up on the screen. Crystal clear was the photo, Shannon wrapped in Scott's arms, kissing, beneath a sunset on a distant beach. Then came the messages. One of them, in full view, read, "After the wedding, I'll leave Patrick. We are the future." Shannon's face went pale. She began trembling. And then she screamed, threw the bouquet, ripped off her veil, and fled racing down the aisle under a storm of gasps and stunned faces. Her gown dragged behind her like a white stain of disgrace. Patrick didn't chase. He didn't flinch. He stood tall, back straight, like a man who had just survived the storm in his heart. Chapter 8. When Truth Becomes a Weapon. The church all but erupted after Shannon's dramatic retreat. She never looked back. Her expensive wedding gown trailed behind her like the tail of a deceiver, exposed and humiliated. Pastor Williams stood frozen, stammering, unable to find words. The guests were in chaos. Some covered their mouths. Others whispered loudly. A few pulled out their phones. I knew what had just happened wouldn't stay confined to this church. It would spread like waves crashing past the shore. Patrick remained at the altar. No tears, no trembling. My brother looked straight ahead where he was supposed to read his vows. Now that space was empty like his heart the moment he learned the truth. I walked up beside him. We said nothing, just held each other's hands tightly. We hadn't ruined a wedding. We had liberated it. My mother whispered my name in worry. My father leaned in to ask Patrick if he was all right. Pastor Williams, still flustered, finally bowed his head and murmured a prayer under his breath. Then my phone rang. Scott. The traitor had finally shown his face. I answered, keeping my voice level. "Hello, Jaime." "What the hell is going on?" Shannon just called me, sobbing. "She said the wedding's off." I smirked. "Yep, canceled. And funny, isn't it, how she called you first? Not her fiancé." There was a pause on the other end. I don't know what you're implying." "Oh, come on, Scott. Drop the act. You really thought I wouldn't find that wooden box behind the paint cans, or that a beach towel could cover your entire mess." Silence. Pure loaded silence. Then finally, "We need to talk. Then come to the church. but this time, speak the truth. Scott showed up in less than 30 minutes. White dress shirt, black slacks, trying to look composed, but his panicked eyes gave him away. The moment he walked into what was supposed to be a sacred place, of vows he knew, it was over. Patrick stood across from him, unmoving like stone. As for me, I folded my arms, watching Scott with no pain left, only a sharp, cold contempt. Why, I asked. Why did you betray me? With my own future sister-in-law, Scott stammered. He began with the classics. I didn't mean for it to go that far. Shannon and I just connected. It was a moment of weakness, but then things spiraled out of control. Patrick let out a dry, bitter laugh, a moment of weakness that lasted across 4 seasons. Dozens of photos, hundreds of texts, and a plan to leave me right after the wedding. Scott turned to me, eyes pleading. Jaime, I'm sorry, but you have to understand. We were drifting apart. You weren't the same. I felt alone in my own home. So you decided to build a new one. With Shannon, I said calmly, nodding. Nice timing, too. While I was addressing wedding invitations for my brother, you were texting his bride and calling her babe. At that moment, my mother walked in. She had heard enough. Her eyes were red, heavy with pain. There were no screaming fits, no dramatic slaps, just the heavy silence of a family that had just been betrayed from the inside out. In the end, Scott lowered his head, knowing the game was over. He walked out without a proper apology, never looked back. I didn't follow him. Patrick didn't either, because no one chases after a man who willingly walks away from the trust of those who loved him most. Chapter 9. When Silence Delivers. Justice. After that day at the church, everything drifted by like a long, surreal dreamlight with relief, sharp with ache. No one in the family ever mentioned Shannon again. She vanished from Patrick's life like a nightmare, dissolving the moment you open your eyes. A few days later, I got a message from an old friend who worked at Shannon's former company. She quit. Said she was moving to another state, starting over. Starting over? What a joke. She wasn't starting over. She was running. Running from the shame in my family's eyes, from the guests who had witnessed her public unmasking at the altar, and most of all, running from her own reflection. A woman who had plotted to sell someone else's happiness to purchase a counterfeit life. And Scott, he moved out that very day, packed in silence, avoiding my gaze like it burned with truth. No tears, no pleas. Just the slam of the car door and the sound of an engine fading into a gloomy afternoon. I stood by the window and watched him drive away. No anger, no sorrow, just peace. A strange, quiet peace. We had no children, few legal tangles aside from house deeds and shared assets. It ended with a signature, but the price Scott paid wasn't about money or reputation. He lost me forever. Patrick surprised me with his strength. My little brother, who once believed in love like a child believes in fairy tales, quietly moved back into his old bedroom at our parents' house. Some days I'd find him sitting for hours on the porch, holding a lukewarm cup of coffee, staring into nothing. Then he'd turn to me and say with a faint smile, "You know, I'm not sad I lost her. I'm sad I once believed she was the one." I squeezed his hand and told him, "That's okay. Sometimes we have to get lost to learn how to choose the right road." We started over with the simplest things, cooking together, walking the dog, replanting the flower beds our mom had long neglected because of her aching back. And in that stillness, I realized healing doesn't come from revenge. It comes from clarity. A month later, I heard Scott had moved to the East Coast. Someone said he was living in a small apartment, job hopping, unstable. And Shannon. No one really knew. Rumor had it she was working at an event company in some other state, but no spotlight waited for her anymore. I didn't need the details. Whether they soared or spiraled wasn't part of my story anymore. My life no longer revolved around waiting for anyone's apology. I began to paint again. The room that had once been Scott's home office became my little studio. white walls, morning light pouring in. The first painting I finished was streaked with bold red lines across a gray background like a cleansing fire. I titled it Liberation. I was no longer the woman who found out her husband was cheating in the garage. I was the woman who saved her brother from the wrong life and saved herself from an empty marriage. Chapter 10. The ending wasn't revenge. It was peace. One early autumn afternoon, I sat alone in my art studio, a warm cup of ginger tea in hand. Outside the window, leaves drifted lazily into the backyard, orange, red, and gold weaving together into a soft, natural tapestry. The house was unusually quiet, but not the kind of quiet that follows an argument. This was the quiet that comes when peace finally returns. I looked up at my newest painting, an unfinished portrait. No one else but Patrick, my brother. He had gone back to work recently, no more heavy expression, no more hollow gaze. Every time he walked into the house, laughter followed like it used to. He had survived, and so had I. There was no need for elaborate revenge. No twisted plan to make Shannon or Scott pay through emotional torture. They destroyed themselves. A love built on deception can't survive in the light. They loved each other because it was forbidden, because betrayal gave them a thrill, but once it was all exposed to daylight, all that remained was shame. I remember the day Scott left. He stood by the door with a suitcase, his eyes miserable, more fragile than I had ever seen him. But I didn't cry. I had forgiven him, not because he deserved it, but because I didn't want to carry that weight anymore. I wanted peace. I wanted to move forward, not as a woman betrayed by her husband, but as a woman who had saved herself before she lost everything. Now each morning I wake early, make my coffee, open the windows to let the light pour in. Then I sit and paint. No one controls me anymore. No more lies, no more pretending. I've started over slowly, but with intention. Patrick has too. He signed up for a pottery class on weekends. Seems like he's finding himself again piece by piece through small, gentle things. And me, I have plans. Solo travel, a small art exhibit in the city. Maybe I'll write a book about this, or maybe not. But what I know for sure is this: I will never lose myself again. And if someone were to ask me, when did you know you had truly won? I wouldn't say, it was when Shannon tore off her veil and fled the church. Not when Scott lowered his head in apology. Not when friends called to say, I was so brave. No, it was that moment when I sat alone in a quiet room painting the first brushstroke of a brand new chapter. No more rage, no more fear, just freedom, and a heart that had come back to life. When all the secrets were revealed, when the wedding dress was thrown in the middle of the altar, when a cheating husband walked out of the house without looking back, I still stood there, not broken, not revenged by fire, but with the serenity of someone who chose the truth and let go. I don't need to make them suffer like I did, because they dug their own graves. And me, I moved on with the feet of a woman who was no longer afraid of losing anyone, because finally I found myself again. If you have ever fallen into a toxic relationship, been betrayed, had to hide your tears at seemingly happy parties, I hope this story shows you can get out, and you deserve a different life. A life that doesn't require you to pretend to be strong because you are already strong.